we will do better than anybody can do, but still, it will never be satisfactory. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to ask Jessie Liu, the U.S. Attorney for District of Columbia, to give us a few examples of cases that she's worked.
Well, thank you very much, Secretary Nielsen, and thank you, Mr. President, for inviting me to be here to talk about MS-13 and what we're doing to combat it here in Washington, D.C. As the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, my top priority is the safety of the people who live and work here, and that means protecting them from vicious criminal gangs like MS-13. So in recent years, working with our law enforcement partners, we've successfully prosecuted a number of MS-13 leaders and members for murder, maiming, racketeering, and other crimes. And a number of those individuals are now serving prison sentences of life or even beyond. In one case, a woman in D.C. took in an MS-13 gang member from her home country of El Salvador and allowed him to live with her and her family. The gang member then began recruiting the woman's son to join MS-13. And when she objected, the gang member shot her in the head as she was waiting at a bus stop 3 miles from where we're sitting right now, and then shot her again in the head as she was lying on the ground in a pool of blood. Miraculously, Mr. President, she survived, but she was permanently blinded by that attack. In another case my office handled, MS-13 members repeatedly stabbed and killed a 14-year-old boy near the Columbia Heights metro station, and that's about 2.5 miles from where we're sitting right now. In yet another case, MS-13 members attacked a fellow MS-13 member who had removed his gang tattoos. They stabbed him at least 20 times and killed him. We believe that these prosecutions, which took many years to build, helped disrupt MS-13 in the District of Columbia, but we know that it continues to operate here in this city as well as next door in Virginia and Maryland. And we're particularly concerned about its international reach, including its violence and drug dealing and its efforts to recruit young people. That's why we work every day very closely with our fantastic law enforcement partners at ICE, at the FBI, at the Metropolitan Police Department, and other agencies, as well as our strong allies in the community who work to dissuade young people from joining gangs like MS-13. Mr. President, we're very grateful for the support that you've given to our efforts, for our close partnership with the Secretary and her team, and from the guidance and resources from our colleagues at Maine Justice, like Mr. Cronin. And I thank you again for the opportunity to brief you on this today.
Thank you, Jessie, very much.
Thank you very
Great
much.
job.
Thank you. I'd like to turn over to Director Cisna, who you've been hearing from a lot as we work to revise our immigration system. He's going to talk a little bit about the backlog and how that further exacerbates this problem.
So, Mr. President, there's at the outset of your remarks, you talked about the 4 pillars of immigration reform that the administration is advancing right now: the getting rid of chain migration, getting rid of the visa lottery, border security, and some sort of DACA fix. This issue of gangs attaches itself to each of those in a different way. And I think border security, obviously, if the border is not secure, it's not just a question of border integrity or the integrity of our immigration laws, but as Agent Melendez just described, if these people are coming through because the border is insecure, it harms public safety in the interior as well. It's all connected. With respect to the other 3, any immigration program that has little to no selectivity is going to potentially allow malified actors to come into the country if we're not watchful and if the law does not help us. I would say one thing I want to amplify then on something the Secretary said. She talked about the loopholes that we've also been struggling against in the priorities we've been advancing. The loophole that she talked about was that there are no grounds in the law right now that permit us to deport a gang member merely because he's a gang member. We have to wait until they've actually killed somebody or harmed an American. Then we have a reason to deport them. Then we can get them. Or if they're here unlawfully, okay. But if they're here lawfully and they're a gang member, there's no ground of removability. Similarly, there's no ground of inadmissibility. So we can't stop them from coming in, and my people may have to grant them an immigration benefit because there's nothing in the law that makes a gang member, merely because they're a gang member, ineligible for that benefit. Indeed, they might even get citizenship. Under the law right now, you have to have what's called good moral character to become a citizen. But Gang membership is not explicitly on the list of things that makes you not qualify for good moral character. We can take it into account, we can look at it, we can weigh their gang membership against other things in their life, but we are not required to deny them the citizenship. This is untenable, and I urge the members of Congress sitting here today to help us fix that. That is a horrendous loophole. It affects public safety, it affects the integrity of our laws. It cannot stand. That's my
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Francis.
Thank you. If we could turn it over to Sheriff from Loudoun County, if you could give us some perspective from the field, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Mike Chapman. I'm the Sheriff of Loudoun County. Honored to be here, and we represent probably one of the fastest growing, wealthiest counties in the nation. Even Forbes magazine, I think, is the happiest county in the nation. And despite that, we still have gang problems out there. A couple years ago, we had 2 gang homicides directly involved MS-13 members as both against 18th Street members, so they were both the victims and the assailants in this. One was a 16-year-old boy waiting to get on the school bus, got gunned down while just getting ready to go on the school bus. And another victim was stabbed 17 times. He was jumped by other gang members and stabbed 17 times. So it's a very real problem out there, and we have to be concerned about that, what we do enforcement-wise. And also, being a full-service sheriff's office, we also handle the jail. So we have to make sure that anybody that we get into that jail that has that's an illegal alien, that we make sure that we notify ICE, and we've had a great relationship with ICE, and they've come in and gotten practically everybody that we've had in the jail. So we notify them as quickly as we can in advance, and we do that. Now, we have a great relationship with our state and local counterparts, with our federal counterparts. We're part of the Northern Virginia Gang Task Force. That's a 12-agency team that surrounds the Washington, D.C. area, and that team is responsible for really going after many of these gang crimes that you see in the particular area. It's great. I'm formerly with the Drug Enforcement Administration, so I've been able to leverage my federal partnerships with the DEA and the FBI to make sure that we're all part of the same team, working together with Homeland Security, HSI. We have somebody on the task force there. We have members cross-designated to FBI to us to them, so we're trying to make sure that we have a robust interrelationships going on with everybody in the area to make sure that we're not missing a trick when it comes out there to who is who, what they're doing, and how we can best go after these people. We also, and I know I work quite a bit with Congresswoman Comstock here, and I know she's pushing the bill here, Project Safe Neighborhoods. I don't want to steal your thunder, but we are looking to get additional funding to make sure that we sustain this Northern Virginia Gang Task Force because it has been so successful in the area. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sheriff, very much.
I'm just going to turn it over to Chairman McCall from
Yeah,
House
I would like to
Homeland.
hear
But before I do, I just want to say, sir, I think what you've heard on this side of the table is it takes a whole of government approach, and we're able to do that under your leadership, which we appreciate. So state, local, and federal partners, and also our international partners. I think you've heard a lot as well, that we're trying to work with the countries, the originating countries, to help stop it there.
But you can only do as much as the law permits.
Yes.
And the law doesn't permit you to do very much,
Yes, sir.
less than any nation in the world. If other nations see what we're doing and they do watch what we're doing, they laugh at us. They can't believe that, these policies where you can't get people out that you know are killers, literally killers, and you have to release them. And we're going to change it. One of the things that we'll do is have much better cooperation, because some countries, we not, on top of everything else, we give them tremendous amounts of aid, and then they won't take their killers back when we have them. Is that a correct statement, Sheriff? They won't take them back. So we bring them back into the countries. They say, no, we don't want them, and yet we give them billions of dollars in aid. So I've told my people, anybody that doesn't take them back, Peter, we immediately say, that's okay. We just saved a lot of money. We're not going to do it. And immediately they start taking them back. That's happened in numerous occasions. So they've never done that before. They never thought it was appropriate to talk about aid and the money that we give these countries, foolishly. So I'd like to hear from Michael, and I'd like to hear from Peter and Lee real quickly, and Barbara, if you could. And just as to what you think, because I know you've been suffering with this, Peter. And Michael, I know you've been so much into it. This is what you do, and you've been suffering with this whole thing for a long time. One of the things that we're trying to do is, in the legislation that we're talking about, we have a lot of laws that nobody even mentions, but they have to be changed. They have to be gotten rid of, and we have very tough provisions for coming into this country. And it will cover you, and I think we're very specific as to what we have to do. And we stop catch and release. We stop a lot of elements of what we have that are very, very bad and very dangerous for our country. Michael?
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam Secretary. Yeah, as a federal prosecutor in my home state of Texas on the border, I've seen the human drug trafficking, these heinous murders that you've heard about for too long. The first bill I introduced was to end catch and release. And here we are still talking about that problem. The difference, sir, is that you're President of the United States. The difference is that we now have the political will in Washington to finally fix this problem. I've seen it for a long time as chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. Secretary Lynn Kelly talked about transnational criminal organizations possibly working with terrorists to get into the United States. I think that's the worst case scenario that we worry about, is a special interest alien terrorist getting into the United States and killing Americans. That's our utmost responsibility. As you know, Chairman Goodlatte, myself, Martha McSally, have worked to introduce a bill to achieve your 4 pillars of border security, authorizing a wall barrier system and technology and personnel and boots on the ground, ending chain migration, this lottery system that's totally random, that really makes no sense. We had 2 terror attacks in New York that were the result of those 2 programs, and then finally fixing DACA. I just can't tell you how refreshing it is to have the leadership at this table, all across federal, state, and local, paying attention to this very important issue. It's a public safety issue, but it's also a national security issue, and it's time to finally end these dangerous loopholes. When I talk to the secretary, she says, I don't have the authority to deport these dangerous criminals. I've been down to the detention spaces. I've seen these teenage males that their home becomes MS-13. That becomes their family. And then they're a threat to our society. And so we want to give the secretary that authority to end and close the dangerous loopholes so we can deport and remove these dangerous criminals from the United States.